My name is Claire Tran. I'm 33 years old, born and raised in Pennsylvania, to a Vietnamese mother and an American father who left when I was 12. I'm a restaurant investor, now co-owner of a small hospitality group that manages 7 venues between New York, Philly, and D.C. I'm not famous, but I'm known enough in the right circles that my name opens doors. Except tonight, it didn't. Tonight I stood outside one of my buildings, a boutique estate we acquired 3 months ago, and the girl at the front desk couldn't find my name on the guest list. It was supposed to be my brother's night. Michael Tran, 29, software consultant. Boyishly charming with perfect hair and zero culinary opinions. He was getting engaged to Ashley, polished, polite, raised on country clubs and confidence. The party was at Cresswell Estate, a restored farmhouse venue just outside the city. It had been closed for almost a year before my team signed the lease, gutted the interior, and rebuilt it from floor to ceiling. I'd signed off on every lighting fixture, every tile, every inch of reclaimed oak in that space. And yet, my name wasn't on the list. I arrived early, something I do out of habit more than enthusiasm. I wore a black silk dress, long-sleeved mid-calf, elegant in the way quiet power is elegant. Not flashy, just intentional. My heels clicked softly on the stone path as I approached the front entry, where a young hostess in a velvet jumpsuit stood behind a floral podium. "Hi there," she said, with the kind of smile you're trained to deliver in hospitality school. "Welcome to the Tran Whitaker engagement party. Can I get your name?" "Claire?" "Tran?" I said. She typed, then paused. Her smile didn't disappear, not quite, but it lost its shine. "I'm so sorry. I'm not seeing that name on the guest list." I blinked slowly. "I'm Michael's sister." She gave a little nod, the kind reserved for awkward situations, like when someone thinks they're invited but aren't. "Let me double check. Okay, I have Michael and both of his parents listed as family." I tilted my head slightly. "That's interesting. Would you like me to call someone from the party?" "No," I said. "No, thank you." She nodded, probably relieved, and turned back to her iPad. I stepped to the side. From where I stood just beyond the entryway, I could see through the glass doors. Inside, the room was glowing. Gold string lights draped like constellations across the ceiling beams. Tables are set in navy and cream. A pianist in the corner played something soft and cinematic. And there, near the open bar, stood Michael, my little brother, the boy who once snuck into my bed during thunderstorms. The boy I used to make peanut butter sandwiches for when Mom worked double shifts. The boy who cried when I dropped him off at middle school because I'd cut my hair and didn't look like Claire anymore. He was laughing now, relaxed, holding champagne. His arm was around Ashley's waist as she leaned in to whisper something in his ear. My mother stood nearby, fussing with the centerpiece, her pearls catching the light. They looked like a magazine cover, a perfect picture. And I wasn't in it. I stepped back, then again. The cold wind tugged at my dress. I reached into my clutch and pulled out a small envelope, a handwritten card, nothing dramatic with a check inside. A quiet congratulations. I had rewritten it 4 times that week. Changed "proud of you" to "wishing you the best." Removed the line about childhood. Kept it safe, neutral, unmemorable. Now I couldn't decide if it was too much or not enough. I should have left, right then. Slipped away, gone home, ordered takeout, pretended I was above it. But my feet stayed planted. It wasn't the first time I'd been edited out of a family moment. When Michael got his first internship, I was the one who drove him to the interview and waited outside in my car for 2 hours. When he bought his first condo, I lent him the down payment, something no one remembered later except my accountant. I was the dependable one, the fixer, the background sister in family group texts, who always replied with a thumbs up or "great job" while they made plans without me. Mom once said, "You're so independent, Claire. You don't need us like he does." Maybe she was right. Perhaps I didn't need them. But that didn't mean I didn't want them. A voice in my head whispered, "Just go." You knew this would happen. But then something older, deeper, rooted in every year I'd been overlooked. Another voice answered, "You do not disappear. Not here. Not tonight. I looked back at the hostess. Actually, I said, voice steady. Would you mind calling the general manager? She looked confused. The GM or the CEO? I added. Either one. Just tell them Claire Tran is here. She hesitated, then nodded. One moment, ma'am. I stood tall. My fingers tightened around the envelope. Through the glass, I watched them toast again. The clink of champagne. My name still nowhere. But soon, very soon, it would be. Not as a guest. As the owner. Our dad left when I was 13. It wasn't dramatic, no shouting match, no suitcase slammed shut. Just one morning, his coffee cup still on the table, a note by the sink. I can't do this anymore. Mom sat on the floor and cried for an hour, while Michael, only 9, tried to feed the cat cereal because someone still has to be the grown-up. That's when I became the second parent. At first, I didn't mind. It felt instinctive, natural. The lunches, the laundry, the keeping things calm. When Mom picked up night shifts at the hospital, I stayed up with Michael, helped with his math, and tucked him in. He hated the dark. So I started leaving the hallway light on, something I still do even now out of muscle memory. Mom was always exhausted. She used to say, Michael needs you, Claire. You're stronger than he is. At the time, I thought it was a compliment. It wasn't. It was permission. Permission to forget that I was a child too. Permission to expect nothing, ask for nothing, need nothing. Michael, though. Michael was the golden child, always had been. He was charming, sensitive, and funny. Teachers adored him. Neighbors slipped him extra Halloween candy. Strangers smiled at him like he belonged to a better story. And to be fair, he did. He was the one with the big, bright future, the one everyone pinned their hopes on. I just helped hold the ladder. When I turned 16, I got my first job at a diner downtown. I worked the 6 a.m. breakfast shift before school, then came home, made dinner, and helped Michael with his homework. I never complained. Not out loud, anyway. By senior year, my guidance counselor asked where I planned to apply for college. I told her I didn't. I didn't have time to think about dorm rooms or essays or majors. I had bills to help with, a little brother to get through high school. I did take one culinary management course at the community center down the street. That's where I met Kara. She was a guest lecturer, a woman in her 40s, who'd once managed Michelin kitchens before starting her small hospitality firm. She was blunt, brilliant, and completely uninterested in anyone's excuses. I liked her immediately. After class, I asked if I could shadow her sometime. She gave me her card. 1 week later, I showed up at 6 a.m. with a notebook and no expectations. By the time I turned 22, I was helping manage 3 of her properties. It wasn't glamorous. It was grease traps and broken toilets and reprinting menus at 2 a.m. when someone misspelled charcuterie. It was hauling wine crates in heels and memorizing names of regulars and learning how to fire someone gently but firmly. But it was mine. It was the first space where I didn't have to be anyone's backup plan. When Michael got into NYU, I paid for his application fees. He didn't know that. He still doesn't. When he landed his first job out of college, I sent him a congratulatory bottle of whiskey, signed it from Mom. He called her crying. She never corrected him. When he moved into his new apartment with Ashley, I sent them a gift basket with linen napkins and a handwritten recipe card for the Vietnamese chicken stew Dad used to make. No one asked where it came from. No one asked if I was coming to the housewarming party. I wasn't invited. Meanwhile, I kept growing. I invested in my first venue at 26, a cafe downtown with bad plumbing and great light. I poured everything I had into it, ran it 6 days a week, cleaned bathrooms myself for the first 6 months because we couldn't afford a janitor. 2 years later, Kara and I partnered on a second property, then a third. We built slowly, intentionally. No big PR campaigns, no glitz. But behind the scenes, we were building something real. We now own 7 venues, including the one where Michael was celebrating tonight. I never told my family about any of it, not because I was hiding, but because they never asked. Mom still calls to talk about Michael, his work, his car, his cholesterol. She ends every conversation the same way: "You're so stable, Claire. Thank God for you." Like I'm furniture. like I'm the power strip behind the wall everyone plugs into but never looks at. She used to say, "Michael's our pride. You're our rock." And I get it now. Rocks don't get applause. They just hold things up quietly without asking to be seen. Sometimes I wonder if I trained them to forget me. If I got so good at surviving without help, without recognition, that they believed I didn't need it. Maybe that's the trap of being capable. People stop asking if you're okay. They just assume you are. So they forgot to invite you. To the conversations. To the milestones. To the engagement parties. They forget you until they can't anymore. And tonight, they will remember me. Not because I want revenge, but because I deserve to be seen fully, finally, not as the helper or the background or the backup plan, but as the woman who built something of her own, as the woman who owns the ground they're standing on. This event space, white stone walls, cascading lights, warm wood floors used to be a cafe. Not the trendy kind. No Edison bulbs or craft matcha. Just a humble, weathered coffee shop with chipped green paint on the shutters and a bell that rang whenever the front door opened. They served thick slices of banana bread and lukewarm espresso, and the window seats were always mismatched. But it was warm, it was safe, and once, a long time ago, it was our little escape. I must have been 22. Michael, 18. He was home from college on winter break, thin, tired-looking, having just broken up with someone I never got the full story on. I had picked him up from the train station, and instead of going straight home, we stopped at the cafe. It was snowing lightly. Our shoes were soaked. I remember the exact moment. We sat at the back, next to a radiator that rattled every few minutes, sipping hot chocolate, because it was cheaper than coffee. He leaned his head against the window and said, "Do you ever think we'll be rich?" I laughed. Rich in what debt? He smiled that crooked smile he always had when he was only half joking. No, I mean, I don't know. Have a place. Like this. But ours. I looked around then at the uneven floors, the crooked frames on the wall, the old man in the corner writing poetry on a napkin. I don't want a mansion, I told him, just somewhere with good music, good light, and people who feel safe walking through the door. He nodded like I had said something important. Then he said, "If I ever make it big, I'll buy you a place like this." I told him he didn't have to, but I never forgot that promise. When the cafe closed 5 years later, I was already managing 2 restaurants. One was a wine bar in D.C., the other a brunch spot in South Philly. We were still small then, and Kara bootstrapping every lease, negotiating every delivery route, reprinting menus ourselves when the printer broke. I remember driving past the shuttered windows one evening and seeing the for lease sign taped to the door. I parked, got out, stood there for a full 10 minutes in the cold. Then I called Kara. "This place," I said. "I think it should be ours." We didn't have the capital yet, but we found a way. We pitched investors, restructured 2 contracts, and 6 months later, we got the keys. The space had changed, of course. The walls had been redone in pale stone. The floors were refinished in a walnut stain so dark they almost gleamed. We knocked down the dividing wall to open up the main hall, added French doors that led to a private garden, strung lights across the beams like stars. It was beautiful. Not because it was expensive, because it meant something, because it had history. Ours. No one in my family knew I bought it. When Mom asked what I'd been working on that year, I told her a new project, out near the county line. She didn't ask more. Michael and I hadn't talked properly in months by then. He'd gotten engaged around that time, and our calls became brief and surface level. "How's work? How's Ashley? You good?" Once I almost told him. I almost sent a picture of the old cafe, now transformed, now glowing. But something stopped me. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was that same ache you feel when someone forgets a memory that meant everything to you. Kara once asked me why I kept it quiet. She knew the history. She'd seen me cry in the middle of demo day when they tore down the radiator we used to sit next to. "They don't even know you own it?" she asked, surprised. "No," I said. "They've never asked." That's the thing about becoming invisible in your own family. You stop offering pieces of yourself. You stop correcting them when they forget. You stop sharing victories because you know they won't be received with joy, just polite nods or worse indifference. I didn't need them to be impressed. I just wanted them to see me. And this place, this venue they chose unknowingly, it was the last thread I had to a version of Michael that still felt like mine. Before the parties, before the distance, before Ashley and her perfectly curated engagement photos. Maybe he didn't remember the cafe. But I did. Maybe he thought this was just a pretty space. But for me, this was the dream we whispered in snowlight over watery cocoa and radiator hum, the place he once said he'd give me. He never did. So I built it myself. I stood by the door for 10 minutes pretending to text. Thumb hovering over the screen, eyes locked on nothing. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure someone inside could hear it. I shifted my weight from one foot to the other, my heels scraping against the stone. I could have left. No one would have noticed. No one would have asked where I was. But I didn't move. Instead, I looked through the glass again, a shimmering wall between me and a family that once knew me better than anyone. Inside, people were laughing. Champagne flowed freely. The string lights overhead gave everyone that warm, romantic glow, like they'd all stepped into a dream. Ashley's parents were mingling with Michael's college friends. Some guests posed near the flower arch for selfies. My eyes found my mother. She was standing beside Michael, gently fixing the angle of his tie with both hands, her face beaming. Her pearls glinted in the light. Her back was straight with pride, the posture she reserved for when things looked just right. Then Ashley leaned in, kissed Michael on the cheek and whispered something into his ear. He laughed. The whole scene looked staged, effortless, perfect, and completely unfamiliar. I watched them for another minute, then looked down at my phone again, opened the weather app, closed it, opened messages. No new texts. Not from Mom, not from Michael, certainly not from Ashley. It hit me then, hit me. They hadn't forgotten. They'd excluded me. There was no accident here, no lost invite, no crossed wire. They didn't want me here. A woman brushed past me on her way inside. She wore a wine-colored dress and a tight expression. As she walked by, she muttered under her breath, "Vendors should wait by the alley." My jaw clenched. I didn't respond. I didn't look like a vendor. I didn't look like a guest either. I looked like someone on the edge of something too well-dressed to be staff, too out of place to belong. And still I stayed. Because despite everything, despite the years of distance, the forgotten birthdays, the forced small talk at Christmas, this was my brother. Our memory, my space. I was the one who packed his lunch through senior year when Mom started working overnights. I was the one who sat next to him in the church pew at our father's funeral, holding his hand so tightly he had fingernail marks on his palm afterward. I was the one who carried him when he cried in 8th grade because a teacher said he wasn't college material. But I wasn't inside. I wasn't even a shadow in the room. A gust of wind hit my back. I wrapped my arms around myself, gripping tighter onto the envelope still tucked beneath my coat. My fingers were stiff. Something cracked quietly inside me, not like a clean break, but a shift. The way a frozen lake moans before the surface splits. I took a breath, then another, and I walked back to the check-in stand. The same hostess was still there now, talking to someone with a clipboard. She turned when she saw me, her expression softened. "Miss Tran." "I'm really sorry again." I raised my hand gently. "No worries," I said. "Would you mind calling the CEO of the property or the general manager if they're on site?" She blinked. I'm not sure." "You can tell them Claire Tran is here," I said. "They'll know." The clipboard woman stepped closer. "Is something wrong?" "No," I said with a smile. "Everything's exactly as it should be." I took a step back, finally letting go of the envelope in my coat pocket. I tucked it into my clutch, a quiet symbol of all the things I used to bring unacknowledged support, presence, love, labor. I didn't need to offer anything tonight. I had already given enough. A small group of guests filtered in behind me. The woman in the wine dress returned with a friend, now laughing loudly, drunk on Prosecco and safety. One of them glanced at me again with that familiar look of judgment. The kind of look women wear like perfume at events like this. I ignored them. I didn't come to be seen by them. I came to be known. And the moment I heard the sound of familiar footsteps coming down the hallway, fast, deliberate, accompanied by the hushed urgency of event staff, I knew they were about to know me, the way they never had before. Not as the sister who gave quietly, not as the girl who waited by the door, but as the woman who owned it. The hostess hesitated, glancing at the clipboard woman beside her. There was a flicker of uncertainty, as if deciding whether to challenge me or comply. But my voice didn't waver. "Please tell Mr. Wexler," I said again, "that Claire Tran is here." A pause. Then the woman nodded, pulled out a radio from her belt, and stepped to the side to speak quietly into it. I waited, not out of impatience, out of certainty. 2 minutes later, I heard him before I saw him. Fast, steady footsteps echoing down the hall. Then came the man himself, tall, silver-haired charcoal suit, cut with quiet luxury. He moved with the effortless calm of someone who knew how to manage chaos without raising his voice. He saw me, and his face broke into a wide, genuine smile. "Claire, I didn't know you'd be here tonight." He said it like an old friend greeting someone beloved, which in many ways I was. "Hi, Alan," I replied softly. He stepped forward gently, brushing past the confused staff, and reached out to clasp both of my hands in his. "God, it's good to see you. I just spoke with Kara this morning. She mentioned the new Denver project. You must be exhausted." I laughed lightly, just loud enough for the people nearby to hear. "A little." The room behind us had begun to quiet. Conversations dipped, eyes turned. The hostess stepped back instinctively, sensing the air had changed. Alan straightened. His voice carried with the ease of authority, loud enough for the reception area to hear, loud enough for the front of the main room to catch wind. "Everyone," he said, gesturing toward me with a kind of reverence. "This is Claire Tran. She owns this venue." He paused for effect, then added deliberately, "She's one of the founding partners of Tran and More." A beat of silence, then a gasp. Not loud, more like the collective intake of breath from people realizing they'd misunderstood something very important. A ripple moved through the crowd. My mother, halfway through a sip of sparkling rosé, froze. Glass midair. Eyes locked on me. She didn't blink, didn't breathe. Her mouth parted slightly, as if searching for a script that didn't exist. Michael turned too. He was standing near the bar, hand resting casually on Ashley's back. His expression shifted in slow motion. Confusion, recognition, then a kind of stunned awe. Like he was seeing someone resurrected. Like I was a ghost from a story he forgot he knew. Ashley leaned toward him, whispering something sharp. I didn't care enough to read her lips. My brother stepped forward, his mouth opening, maybe to speak, maybe to apologize, maybe to explain why my name was missing from the guest list of a party held in a place I paid for. But I held his gaze just long enough to stop him. No anger, no scorn, just clarity and silence. Alan turned back to me. "Would you like me to walk you in?" I shook my head. "No need. I wasn't planning to stay long." His brow furrowed. "At least let me get you a glass of something." "You built this place, Claire. It deserves your presence." That word presence landed somewhere deep, because for so long, my presence was exactly what had been erased. Now it was the one thing no one could ignore. I took a few quiet steps forward, just enough to cross the threshold into the front of the main room. Not to interrupt, just to exist, fully, openly, visibly. The guests had mostly turned to look now. Some smiled nervously, others looked confused. A few I recognized from family events long past Michael's old friends. Our cousin Natalie, a teacher from our childhood church. Their faces blurred together, but not hers. My mother's eyes stayed locked on mine. She didn't smile. She didn't move. She simply stood there, rosé in hand, stunned into stillness, as if the past 20 years had suddenly crystallized in front of her. I wanted her to say something, anything, but I also didn't need it anymore. I looked at her not as a daughter, desperate for recognition, but as a woman who had built something powerful, without her applause. I turned back toward Alan and nodded. I think I'm done here. He didn't question me, just offered a warm smile. We'll catch up soon. I'll have my assistant set up lunch. I nodded. Then I walked out, heels clicking softly against the floor I paid for. My reflection in the glass door didn't look triumphant, just steady, whole, seen. Wait! I heard his voice just as I turned to leave. Michael! My brother! Footsteps rushed behind me, heels scrambling across hardwood. Claire, he said breathless. You're… That Tran. I paused, turned halfway just enough to meet his eyes. Eyes I'd known since they blinked open in a crib beside mine. Eyes that had once searched for me after every school play, every scraped knee, every heartbreak. The Tran. I said calmly. Yeah, that's me. He blinked stunned. This is your place? One of them? I said, then held up the envelope still tucked in my hand. I just came to drop something off. Congratulations, by the way. He looked down at the envelope as if it might explain something, then back up at me. Why didn't you say anything I didn't know I had to? I replied. It never came up. Ashley appeared beside him, heels clicking fast. She wore apology like perfume strong, manufactured, overdone. Oh my God, she said, forcing a breathy laugh. Claire, this is so awkward. We didn't know. I mean, it was my idea actually to keep it small. Just immediate family. You thought I wasn't part of that? I finished for her gently. She flinched. No, it's not that. It's okay, I said. Really, I meant it. Because in that moment, standing there with the weight of their shock pressing into the silence, I felt nothing but clarity. I wasn't here to shame them. I wasn't here to reclaim some symbolic seat at the table. I just wanted to see it. The place we used to dream of. The dream I carried and kept and built without them. Michael stepped forward again, lowering his voice. Claire, I didn't know about any of this. I feel like an idiot. I offered a small smile. You're not an idiot, Michael. Just a little distracted. He looked down, jaw tightening. I never meant to leave you out, he said. I know. Then why does this feel like… He stopped, looked around at the watching guests, lowered his voice again. Like I failed you somehow, because you did, I said, soft, honest, not cruel. He swallowed. You could have told me. You could have asked. He didn't respond. There it was again, that empty space between us, once filled with Lego castles and whispered dreams over cocoa, now filled with things unsaid for too long. Ashley touched his arm. We really didn't mean anything by it. If we had known… I don't need you to explain, I said. She opened her mouth again, but I lifted a hand gently. I'm not here to crash anything, I said, eyes moving past them to the space, to the walls, to the soft music still humming through the room. I just wanted to see it. The place we used to dream of. Her brows pulled together. What Michael understood. I could see it in his face, the flicker of memory. The snow, the cocoa, that old radiator in the cafe we sat next to, while the world outside felt too heavy for our young shoulders. He remembered. Finally. I bought it 2 years ago, I added, when it went up for lease. Jesus, he whispered. I named the project after us, T&M Holdings. He let out a broken laugh. I thought that was Tran and more. It is, I said. Tran comes first. Behind them, the room had resumed in awkward whispers, guests trying to pretend they weren't watching. My mother had disappeared. Or maybe she hadn't moved. I stopped checking. Somewhere near the back, a waiter spilled a tray of forks. A metallic crash rang out, but no one reacted, because they were still listening to me. I should go, I said. Michael looked like he wanted to say something, maybe 20 different things, but all that came out was, can we talk? Maybe, I said. But not here. He nodded. Ashley stepped back. She was learning. Slowly. I turned toward the door, each step steady, measured. My heels echoed louder now across the floorboards. I chose the beams I paid for the light fixtures I approved. Louder than their whispers. Louder than their guilt. Louder than every moment I had once swallowed in silence. Because sometimes leaving isn't weakness. Sometimes it's power. It's the choice to not demand an apology, but to no longer stand where it's needed. I walked out without looking back. The air outside was colder now, crisper, honest. I stood for a moment on the stone path, then slipped the envelope back into my coat pocket. I had brought it with care, but I no longer felt the need to give it. Maybe some gifts are meant for people who see you. And tonight, I finally saw myself. In the car, I breathed for the first time all night. Not the shallow, composed breaths I train myself to take under pressure. Not the steady inhales I use in meetings or while reviewing investor decks. No, this one is different. This one reaches the bottom of my lungs. The kind of breath that only happens after you stop holding yourself so tightly. The engine hums quietly as I sit behind the wheel hands resting on my lap, the glow of the venue still warm in the rearview mirror. I don't turn to look at it. I've seen it enough in construction blueprints and walkthroughs, in every soft launch and supplier meeting. I built it. They walked into it like it appeared out of thin air. But I knew every beam, every bolt. Just like I've known every silence my family offered me over the years, not loud enough to hurt outright, but just quiet enough to forget me. I remember birthdays they forgot. 17th, I bought my own cake. 21st, Mom called me the next day. 30th, Michael sent a text that said, "You still hate parties, right?" I remember Christmas mornings how I was always the one behind the camera. Not in the photos, just taking them. I remember Thanksgivings where I brought food, set the table, cleared the dishes, and left without anyone asking how my year had been. And yet I also remember the look in Natalie's eyes when she signed her first lease after our Small Business Accelerator program. The tears on Jules's face the day she opened her cafe, the same Jules who started as a dishwasher in one of our kitchens. The laughter at our staff holiday parties, how I learned to create spaces where people felt safe, seen, and celebrated. I remember every woman I mentored who said, "No one ever told me I could do this before." I told them. I showed them. Not because I wanted to be needed, but because I never wanted them to feel how I did. Invisible. Required, but rarely remembered. There's this thing that happens when you grow up being the dependable one. They praise your strength while leaning on you until your spine aches. They admire your stability while never asking how you built it. They forget to check in, not out of cruelty, but because they've come to believe you simply don't need them. But here's the truth no one likes to say out loud. Even the strongest people want to be asked if they're okay. For years I kept showing up. Not loudly, not demanding attention, just showing up. Dropping off food when Mom was sick. Sending checks when Michael hit rough patches. Offering help advice time, even when it cost me pieces of myself. But tonight, standing in the doorway of the very place they thought I didn't belong, something shifted. Not in them. In me. Maybe I never needed their validation. Maybe what I needed was to stop asking for it. My fingers drummed gently on the steering wheel. There's no rage in me, no bitterness, just a quiet peace. Heavy, but clean. The kind that comes after a storm, not when the sun breaks through, but in that in-between moment when everything's still wet, still wrecked. But you know it's over. That's what this is. The aftermath of needing what was never mine to begin with. A seat at their table. The truth, I've built better tables. Tables where women sit beside each other, not behind. Tables where no one forgets the one who lit the candles. Tables where my name doesn't have to be announced because everyone already knows who I am. And maybe they'll never see me. Maybe my mother will always refer to me as my responsible daughter, instead of Claire, the builder of empires. Maybe Michael will always feel a little guilty, a little confused, but never fully understand how it felt to be erased. Maybe I'll always be the one who brought the cake and wasn't offered a slice. But tonight I walked out of a room full of people who never clapped for me. and I heard my footsteps. They were loud, louder than their silence, louder than their belated apologies, louder than the ache I used to carry in my chest every time I wasn't invited. I don't need a seat at their table anymore, because I've built one of my own. And it's long, and it's wide, and it's full of women who were once forgotten, but never again. 2 weeks later, I renamed the venue. It was a quiet morning. No press release, no ribbon-cutting ceremony. Just me, a mug of jasmine tea, and the sound of hammers in the background as the new sign was installed. The Lotus Room. After the flower that grows from mud, from the darkest, wettest, most forgotten places. It blooms anyway, beautifully, silently, without asking permission. It felt right. Not dramatic, not vengeful, just true. The week after the engagement party, I received a flurry of messages, some from guests, most from staff. Ashley texted a clipped apology that felt more like damage control than remorse. My mother sent me a forwarded article about someone else's daughter who opened a wine bar in Oregon. No mention of the party, or of me. But Michael sent a letter. Not an email, not a text. A letter. Handwritten. On heavy paper. The kind you buy when you want your words to feel real. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit on my desk for 2 days, unopened, while I finished some onboarding materials for a new program I was building. A mentorship initiative for first-gen girls. Girls like me. Girls who were told to be dependable instead of being seen. Who learned to clean up messes they didn't make. Who translated bank statements at age 11 and apologized when they didn't get into the Ivy League. I wanted to teach them more than business. I wanted to teach them power, the quiet kind, the kind you carry in your posture, your contracts, your presence, the kind that doesn't need to be loud to be unshakable. When I finally opened Michael's letter, it started simply, "Claire, I don't know if this will fix anything, but I needed to try." He talked about childhood, how he remembered me at Dad's funeral, holding his hand, anchoring him. He said he always believed he was protecting me back then, but now he realizes maybe it was always the other way around. One line near the end caught me. "I think I made you invisible because I needed you to be invincible." I read that sentence twice, then a third time. Not because it hurt, because it was the first time he ever truly saw me. I didn't write back. There was nothing left to explain. But I didn't throw the letter away. I framed it. Simple black frame, no plaque, no caption. I hung it in my office just above the shelf where I keep photos of every woman I've mentored. Their first day headshots, their restaurant launch flyers, their graduation pictures, their smiles wide and unapologetic. The letter sits there quietly, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof. That silence, too, can speak volumes. The Lotus Room has been booked every weekend since the renaming. Weddings, baby showers, fundraisers for immigrant artists. We started offering discounted rates for women-owned businesses. One of our newest clients is a mother-daughter floral design team, first-generation Syrian Americans. Their arrangements fill the space with soft color and story. I host our mentorship sessions in the sunroom on Tuesdays. 12 girls, ages 15 to 22. They ask big questions. How do I get a loan if my parents don't co-sign? How do I charge what I'm worth without being called difficult? How do I say no to family when they expect everything I answer carefully? Not with theory, with lived truth. I tell them, don't shrink to make others feel comfortable. Build rooms where you don't need to beg for a seat. You can be soft and strong. They were never meant to cancel each other out. One of them, Lena, told me last week, "I thought power belonged to loud people, but you're so quiet." I smiled. "I'm not quiet," I told her. "I'm grounded." I still see Michael sometimes. We're not close, not yet. Maybe never the way we once were, but at least now we see each other. He sent flowers to the Lotus Room on opening day, with a note that said, "I'm proud of you, for building what we forgot how to imagine." I didn't reply, but I didn't throw the card away either. Some things don't need a response to be received. People sometimes ask me if I regret not staying longer at the engagement party, if I wish I'd spoken more, said something dramatic, claimed my credit in front of everyone. But I don't. Because walking away calmly, clearly on my terms was the most powerful thing I've ever done. It told a story without shouting. It rewrote history without begging for edits. It said, I am not the forgotten one. I am the foundation. My name is Claire Tran. I used to think I wanted to belong at their table, but now I know I was born to build my own. And my name? It's not just on the guest list, it's on the deed.